Greetings, family. Once again, we're coming to you with another, what we feel like is a very pertinent video. Please excuse the video quality on this. Something's going on with the light in our study. But this is where we've dedicated to do this type of work. We are a Hosu. That means, loosely means king in the Bay language of the Fong people and the other Bay-speaking people. Ahosu Agelo Bagan Abori, the first paramount king of the Ganlodo monarchy, the first Bay-speaking, Dahomian cultured, Fong cultured with monarchy of such in the Western Hemisphere. So we want to get right to it, and we want to talk about something we've been talking about a long time, which is reviving suppressed teachings of African Vodun. People are like, what do you mean by that? And you'll see as we go on with this. So some time ago we wrote on the dire need for reform in African Vodun. Right? So some answered the call, not as many as should have. Many received it well, but for some it was a deer in headlights kind of moment. Reality is reality, though. In that same light of reform, we wish to reveal to you some truths to bring this thing truly full circle. Every noted culture of the world has had its high and low points. Some have recovered, like Chinese, the Indians, the Japanese traditions and their people, and continue to thrive in a new way while still retaining ancient integrity. Some went out of existence altogether, like the ways of Rome and Greece and even ancient Tamaray in African civilization, or so-called ancient Egypt. Yet others have fallen only to become, they're still in existence, but only they've become a shadow of what their true existence is supposed to be or what they used to be. In this case, the latter applies to our very own beloved African Vodun traditions. And we're not talking about any of the Vodun that has been mixed with Catholic saints or anything like that. We're talking about the ones that say they're practicing African Vodun. These words do not come from some anthropologist, archaeologist, academic historian detached from culture. This has come from one who, coming from one who lives African Vodun as a way of life. What you see now as the face of Vodun, like when you go on YouTube or you go to these ceremonies in various cities around the nation, it's only a fragmented shell of itself, broken remnants of what this tradition truly is. Go to YouTube, as we mentioned, in other social media outlets, and what do you see? Postings of thousands of animal sacrificial ceremonies, dilapidated and unkempt shrines and shrine buildings, worn down domiciles, and even unkept palaces where the Ahosus live. You see things like the craze of the Mami Wada myth phenomenon happening, which is but foreign import, bringing not only non-African imagery and practices, but certain foreign degenerate attitudes. Mami Wada is not Vodun. I mean, look at the name, Mami Wada. If it was Vodun, it probably would have a phone or Eve or name, something like that. That's simple math. You don't have to be a scholar and be initiated to figure that one out. You see noted quote-unquote chiefs and priests worshiping Hindu gods in Vodun. You go to Benin and Ghana and Togo right now, you see images of the Hindu deity Shiva on these temples and other many of them, Ganesha and all of them. You won't go to India and see any African Vodun deities painted on any of their temples or any statues. This is not Vodun. All of the above is being presented as the face of African Vodun, whether on purpose or by happenstance, by many Africans. This is self-inflicted. This is quite sad and not a good look, because real Vodun is a beautiful system replete with many profound spiritual and moral teachings. So let's talk about the catalyst of concealment. Why a lot of this confusion is going on today. The catalyst of concealment. Why do these teachings have to be revived and re-revealed from the first place? Right? Why were they seemingly lost? The fact is that these teachings were not altogether lost. Get that straight, obviously, because we have them. Sometimes they were purposely kept in secret confidence by various lineages because of certain dangers that abounded. Many of the adepts saw what was coming. Many were experiencing oppression within their own communities, backed by the larger monarchies. Dahomey being one of them. So they saw it fit to withhold many of the high teachings with hopes that one day they would be revealed to posterity and at the right time. So they didn't want the teachings to get in the wrong hands. What was the nature of the suppression? The primary answer to this lies in the fact of the enslavement of our ancestors. The quote-unquote slave trade impacted Mawufe, foreign word for Africa, in ways that many of her own descendants still have not fathomed. The fact of the matter is that Afrikans sold other Africans. There is also a little known fact that the chief African participants in this tragedy knew this. This truth right here. It is taboo to sell war captives or any other type of captives to someone, especially wholesale. Period. This was taboo. They knew it in Dahomey. They knew it in the various other monarchies there. They knew it in Yoruba land. But they did it anyway. This is one reason this type of behavior was not recorded before the coming of the Arabs. It was taboo and outside of an African protocol to do such. They knew that what they were doing was wrong. Why do you think that on many quote-unquote slaving ports, especially Hueda, or it's now called Huida, that they did ceremonies designed to make the enslaved or captive forget what had happened to them before shipping them off? Why do you think they did ceremonies to try to keep the souls of these people from coming back to hunt them? They well knew what they were doing. That being said, we now know that many of the higher moral, elevating, and spiritual teachings, just a moment, of African Vodun had to be suppressed and even attacked when you take that into consideration. Many of those who wished to still publicly teach those traditions were imprisoned and most often sold into captivity, along with those suspected to be a threat along those lines. This is the reality, the truth of our situation. And that one is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, but that's the fact. And this fact vanquishes the common myth that people of the same ethnic group never sold one another. This did happen often, especially in Dahomey. To put it plainly, the kings, queens, chiefs, priests, katawakata, who were involved in the selling of other Mawufe Numetar, which is the word for African person or people, knew that their actions in the African Vodun teachings were in stark contrast to one another. They either had to stop enslaving people and live real Vodun, or suppress the teachings. And this is exactly what they did, the latter. This suppression took full force from the early 1700s onward. Many teachings were flipped around to replace the ancient solid teachings of love and prosperity. The teachings of Huedote, which is, for those, because a lot of people don't know what we're talking about, so that's like feng shui. Arranging buildings a certain way, arranging shrines a certain way, putting, bedrooms in certain parts of the house. It was called Huedote phone. So the teachings of Huedote, they were suppressed. Huedote had to be suppressed because the allowance of it would bring attention to higher teachings that produced it. Teachings that have to come up when speaking about Huedote. Indigenous meditative practices were suppressed and thrown out. One of the most profound teachings the world could ever have seen, the great Hulangan, which we retrieved and we have presented to the world. It is on our Kilombo restorationhealing.com website, this same blog that you're looking at for sale. It was almost erased from history. Teachings about Salawat, which is like karma, were definitely muffled and scratched when possible. The latter, suppression of Salawa, truly set the solid tone that ushered in a perpetual era of negative juju work, whereas the power medicine of African Vodun would only be used in personal vendetta wars against one another. It's kind of like how hoodoo has became used over here. Thus, we have the teachings being hidden for protection by certain wise ones due to the suppression and oppression, and on the other hand, the outright attempt to destroy the teachings from the memory of the populace from another direction. So, reviving the suppressed teachings of African Vodun. However, we find, with this, there are blessings. Some of our wise ones knew that one day posterity would receive these teachings when the conditions were right. We were personally blessed through the various African Vodun lineages we studied from, that several of them had traditions of keeping the suppressed great teachings of African Vodun. Some even relayed oracular prophecies, as was done from Hebiye when we went there, that told them it was now time to teach and share certain information before it was too late. Thus, we became one of the blessed vehicles to return our true teachings to our people. Unfortunately, many African Vodun practitioners, even in Africa, are still cut off from these teachings, as is evidenced in what the current quote-unquote face of African Vodun has become. This unfortunate quagmire has spread to wherever Vodun is practiced. The pure fact is that, that means excuse us for just a second. We're trying to get our lighting right. So, the pure fact is that even when the truer pre-Nawankuvo are before the disaster, pre-captivity, pre-loss of our mind, the truer pre-Nawankuvo teachings are presented and evident to many. These truths will simply go over their heads or be rejected altogether. That is fine, because the spirits are only concerned with those who wish to live and love Nubo, which is truth.